The story begins inside a dungeon where our main character, Baek, is holding his sword aiming to defeat the great demon lord. The demon lord was standing right in front of him. He activates his berserk skill and charges at the demon lord bravely. It would be the final battle, which is why he was full of eagerness. The demon lord tried to catch him, but he was able to avoid its huge hand and passed at the back. He then stabbed it on its back, expecting that he managed to pierce its heart. But then, the demon lord suddenly said, "Pitiful. A worthless bug dares to bite the dragon's weakness. Do you really think you can beat me?" Baek's sword got broken and twirled in the air. It turned out that the demon lord grabbed it from his back and struck it to Baek. Baek vomits blood and is dumbfounded by the fact that he fails again. He thought that this was truly the end this time, but then again, the demon lord still defeated him. He has repeated this 99 times, but the outcome is still the same. What kind of hellish world is this? He screamed with anger. The demon lord was uttering words and pushed the broken sword deeper into him. He coughed with blood and his eyeball became green. He was then informed that turning back the sands of the hourglass of blessing was happening. Baek wanted to stop it since he believed it shouldn't be called a blessing. However, he doesn't have any capability to stop it. He transmigrated to the world of humans. He found himself lying on the ground under a tree. For him, the hourglass is more of a curse than a blessing. Right now, he has regressed 100 times. Adding it all is probably hundreds of years. But at this time, he hesitated to try defeating the demon lord again. He stared at the crow above him and angrily said he wouldn't try anymore. He got up and sighed, wondering what he should do now that he regressed again for 100 times. 1 year later, in the Yaodo 11th dungeon gate, the sparks are getting more intense, a sign that a dungeon break is about to happen. The people outside the gate were waiting, hoping that the flare knights inside the dungeon could clear it. Rumor says that the flare of the knight leader's flame magic is said to be incredible. It is super hot. They also heard that the leader's name has a unique name. That is, Witch Kim, a sexy lady with a staff, and used it to release fire magic. She managed to defeat a lot of monsters until the only one left was the boss room. But the survivors, only 4 of them left, including Witch Kim. They haven't even seen the boss face and more than 20 knights sacrificed. The vice captain of their team approached her, suggesting to retreat and regroup, knowing that the damage was severe. But then, she believes it's not possible to just retreat, knowing that most of the monsters near the exit would have respawned by now. For her, there are only 2 ways out of this place. First, defeat the boss and clear the dungeon, or die in the boss's room and leave that way. While she was talking, she suddenly smelled something. At first, she made a poker face as she thought it was a poison gas. Then, she realizes that the smell is coming from food. It smells like home for her. Because of it, she remembers her mother calling her for dinner. She almost cried since she missed her sick mother so much, and it's been a long time since she last ate her mother's handmade meal. The vice captain then asked her to look in front of them, as it turned out that someone was cooking inside a food truck. The food truck is named Knight's Restaurant. Witch Kim and the vice captain were surprised since they only heard a rumor that this food truck sometimes appears suddenly in front of dungeons and then disappears. The chef inside was busy cooking. Witch Kim then approached him, calling him the owner, and asked him if the restaurant was open. "Can't you see me cooking?" The guy replied. It turned out that it was Baek. "Do you think I'm here for fun, camping inside a dungeon?" he added, which annoys Witch Kim as it feels like Baek is playing the role of a grumpy old lady. Baek then corrected her that she shouldn't call him owner but should be Chef Baek. "Oh, okay, chef. But I'm really curious, how did you even get in here?" Witch Kim asked. But then, Baek threw her the menu and told her that he had no time for chit-chat. Witch Kim was annoyed while her fat companion behind her was so excited upon seeing that the food on the menu was buff foods. The 2 other men were also shocked as they confirmed that there were really buffs on the food. The samples are power dumplings, which would give 200% strength after eating. Full recovery soup that could recover full health for those C rank and below. And there is also magic boost paste that would give an additional 300 of magic. They then told Witch Kim that they must eat it so they can have a chance to tackle the boss. "Everyone, get a grip. It's not time to be eating right before a crucial boss fight." Witch Kim replied with annoyance. In the end, she was enjoying the food Baek cooked. She ate so much so her companion told her that she might get sick before fighting the boss monster. But then, Witch Kim ignored what they said and continued enjoying her meal and felt the spirit of a free cow running wild in the green pastures. Baek was leaning on his truck with crossed arms, wanting to say that the meal Witch Kim was eating came from a prime minotaur beef that roamed freely. It is the half-ox carpaccio that would give 250% strength and 300% health to the eater for an hour. While Baek was staring at them eating, he overheard the guy with yellow hair whispering that he heard rumors that the ingredients of night restaurant were made from monsters, which Kim spit upon hearing it. The vice captain then said that it doesn't matter if the food was made of monsters or bugs as long as it tastes good. Because of what he said, which Kim was easily influenced. Meanwhile, they finished their meal and gave thanks to Baek. The buff then instantly activated and their health and magic fully restored. Thank you, chef. Thanks to you, we can face the boss battle at full power. We'll see you after we clear the dungeon, which Kim said to Baek, and they were about to leave but Baek pulled her and asked her if she had a plan to skip out on the bill, which Kim then realizes that they haven't paid yet. She gets her wallet and asks Baek the cost of all the food they ate. Baek then said that it cost 20 million won, but then, which Kim and her team were puzzled. Baek then showed them the menu again while informing them that buff food is expensive and it tastes like 6-star hotel cuisine, which is why it is pricey. Plus, it was written on the menu. It's just that it's small, which might be the reason why they didn't notice it. The four looked at it with eye equipment closely. They then discussed what they should do since they spent all their money upgrading their equipment. The men also mentioned that the Carpaccio which Kim ate alone cost 10 million won. They also planned to grind in the dungeon a bit more and then go back to Baek right after. After discussing, which Kim handed a credit card to Baek telling him that they would pay the bill in installments over 6 months. But then, Baek refused and told her that the card didn't work inside the dungeon. Which Kim doesn't have a choice but to hand over all their money to Baek and tells him that they will pay the rest after clearing the dungeon. Since they didn't have a choice, Baek decided to accept the available cash. He then handed a ledger to which Kim and asked her to write her name on it. The ledger looks a bit strange, so she made sure to Baek that they wouldn't die if she signed. Baek then told her, "No, if you don't sign, I'll kill you." Which Kim then signed it immediately and planned to run as fast as she could if anything happened. She was glad that she had always operated under an alias. Upon seeing her name, Baek was hesitant to believe it. Wow, such a rude joke for a bit of credit. Making fun of a precious name given by my parents. Which Kim replied with annoyance, but deep inside, she was nervous thinking that Baek would force her to write her real name. Baek then closed the ledger and said that which is a fitting name for her. He then waved his hand to the hunters, believing that they should be able to handle the boss easily with the buff they received. Then good luck, Captain Witch Kim, he added. Which Kim then held the door of the boss room. She opened it slowly and Baek was looking at them entering. The door then closed after the hunters entered. Baek then counted the cash which Kim paid, and he was satisfied that he reached the highest sales that month. He then flinched as he realized that today marks exactly 1 year since he returned for the 100th time. He believes that he could have lived and eaten well like this, and he vows that he will definitely die of old age this time. His life goal is to die with a natural death. He then decided to leave with his food truck while saying that it was time to trick another customer again. All of a sudden, the boss's room exploded. He looked at it and saw the injured fat man fly away from the boss's room. He was bleeding so much. He slammed into the ground and Baek wondered what happened. Back in his past lives, the boss of Dungeon 11 should be the Grand Golem. In his 99 previous lives, he has killed it over 60 times. He also gave enough buff to those hunters to handle the boss, so was confused. The vice captain charged at the boss monster, but the boss casually swallowed him alive. This time, Baek saw the boss and discovered that the boss this time is a dragon. He then concludes that it might be a wormhole dungeon. When a dungeon break is imminent, there's a very small chance that wormholes between dungeons will connect, allowing monsters from other dungeons to come over and break out together. A rare phenomenon that happens maybe once in a century. At this moment, only Witch Kim remains alive. She still saw Baek, so she told him to run away quickly. Baek then replied that he really will. He then boosts his truck and leaves. But then, the monsters respond, already blocking his way. He smirked, thinking that it was the same as when he entered. He then activates invisibility and his truck disappears. The boss at the same time was staring at Witch Kim. Witch Kim was very determined to stop the dungeon break. She activated her flamethrower, creating a powerful blow of flame, and attacked it to the dragon. She stares at the dragon, waiting to see if the dragon was harmed. But all of a sudden, a memory recalls in her mind. It was the time when they were attacked by goblins, but her mother saved her, calling her by her real name, and Yu Jiang, and telling her to run quickly. Right now, she closed her eyes as she was about to cry. She didn't notice that the flame she created was about to fall on her. Luckily, Baek came back and saved her. She slowly opened her eyes and was surprised to see Baek. Baek was upset that he wasn't able to stop himself from coming back. If Captain Yu Jiang dies, who do I get the outstanding debt from? I almost lost 20 million won, he said, which puzzled the lady. As per Baek, if the world ends due to the dungeon break, He can't die a natural death. Yu Jiang was confused and thought that she was just spitting nonsense. Baek suddenly summoned his sword while telling the lady not to get it wrong as he didn't come back to save her. Yu Jiang was shocked knowing that the thing where Baek's sword came from the dimensional storage, a storage using the rift of dimensions. The dragon charged at Baek. Baek remained standing without feeling any fear. The dragon landed at him, but surprisingly, he was able to stand at the dragon's face. He then stabbed the dragon's eyes while saying that this dragon's head meat is quite tasty except for its poisonous eyes. The dragon screamed in agony. Its tail swung heading to Yu Jiang. Yu Jiang wanted to move away, but she felt that her legs were given out. She thought that she's gonna die, but shockingly, Baek screamed her real name and blocked the dragon to save her for the second time. "Can't you pull yourself together?" he said, and his eyes this time became green since he used his power. Yu Jiang is still dumbfounded. "If someone saves you, at least stay out of danger," Baek added. Yu Jiang then told him to repeat what he said since she was still in shock hearing her real name screamed by Baek. Baek then told her that she couldn't die before paying off her debt. Yu Jiang then said that it wasn't what she wanted to hear. "How did you know my name is in Yu Jiang?" she asked, but Baek was dumbfounded. He was standing still while staring at the lady. Yu Jiang then asked her another question, and that if he knew her. But then, Baek said that she calls her Kim, which Yu Jiang stood and said that she clearly heard it. He called her by her real name. Baek was distracted, so the dragon's tail hit on the wall, and they both fell to the ground. "You must be having a hallucination. It's like a flash of your life before you die," Baek said. Yu Jiang then recalls that she was really having a flashback with her mother earlier. Baek then asked if she usually used fire magic, and she said yes. And as per Baek, they were at a disadvantage knowing that the dragon also has a fire attribute. Even the dungeon is changing the environment to suit the dragon. Originally, the dungeon's environment is optimized for the boss, and now Yu Jiang realizes that it's getting hotter, so she removes her jacket. But then, the dragon blows a fire, so Baek grabbed Yu Jiang and pulled her away from the flame. Baek didn't forget that this blow of fire from the dragon could be taken down someone in one hit. But now, he concludes that they needed a strategy. He was running away while pulling Yu Jiang with him. He then summoned balls, and these balls became a fake human. Yu Jiang felt disgusted upon seeing it, and she asked what it was for. Baek then said that it's his look-alike custom-made dummies at a high cost. But then, Yu Jiang doubted that the dragon would fall for this kind of trick. Baek then threw the dummies toward the dragon. He then asked Yu Jiang if she really didn't have a magic ice attribute. The lady then answered that she have, but she doesn't usually use it because it's weak. Baek then grabbed something from dimensional storage. He grabbed a kettle and was trying to reach for another thing. "What will you do right now? Didn't you say we should run?" Yu Jiang said. Baek then said that all the dummies were destroyed, so they needed to find another way. The dragon blows a fire to the dummies, and Yu Jiang feels the ground shaking. At this moment, Baek gets his special beans that grow in the third tropical dungeon that opened in Mappo. He then brewed the coffee, which rattled the lady as she thought that Baek was just wasting time. Baek was away from the dragon and its attention was toward Yu Jiang. Yu Jiang was running away while Baek was enjoying brewing the coffee and was satisfied with its rich aroma. He then dropped an ice on the coffee. This ice was taken from the wailing ice wall in the 5th dungeon. The dragon widely opened its mouth trying to swallow Yu Jiang. Yu Jiang was so scared. She's running away to survive. When she got away, she immediately attacked the dragon with her fire wing. But then this time, her mana is running out. She also fell down, so she smiled and accepted the fate that she was now going to die. But then, before she slammed on the ground, Baek caught her. Baek then gave her the iced coffee he made and told her to drink it since it was an ice magic buff. It was also on his menu, the Ice Death Americano. This drink would fully restore mana and amplify the water element magic effect by 200%, especially ice magic by 500%, and it will for 10 minutes. Yu Jiang was doubting, so she refused to drink it. But then, Baek forced her to drink it and spill it into her mouth. The lady was moaning. She feels really cold despite that the dungeon has become completely hot. As per Baek, the dungeon turned into a furnace, and he concludes that the dragon is in full power now. Yu Jiang then asked what she should do. The dragon roared so loud as he was blowing another flame. Baek suddenly pushed Yu Jiang to the dragon while saying, "Go there, you said you're cold." Baek was smiling as he believed that Yu Jiang would now feel warm. The dragon blows a flame and Yu Jiang immediately activates her ice storm. Surprisingly, her ice storm this time is quite strong. At this time, Baek accepted the fact that there was nothing they could do if they died here. Otherwise, Yu Jiang has to snow her ice magic in this dungeon. Now, he calls in Yu Jiang the Witch of Ice. Yu Jiang's ice magic passed through the flame. She almost fell to the ground after releasing it. Surprisingly, a critical hit was inflicted. Baek then climbed on the dragon and ran towards its head. He then activates his torch skill and jumps toward the dragon's neck. He then slashed his sword and finally killed the dragon by cutting its head. The dragon's head dropped to the ground and Baek also landed, his power still activated. At this time, he was moaning in pain. Yu-jeong at the same time was still kneeling on the ground and she was in disbelief that she was still alive. The area was still smoking due to the flame. A sword suddenly appeared in front of Yu-jeong and someone choked her. She was shocked when it turned out that it was Baek. Baek pushed her on the ground while pointing her the sword. Yu-jeong was shocked. She was staring at the sword that had the blood of the dragon. She uttered Baek's name and there's a part of Baek telling him to kill the lady. Baek grits his teeth as he doesn't want to do it. Yu-jeong closed her eyes and didn't resist. She widely opened her eyes when she felt Baek hit her face. Her blood splattered, but it was just a small wound on her cheek. She was dumbfounded and scared. Baek was still holding her neck and suddenly smiled, then said, "You should have avoided the blade." But Yu-jeong was mad at him for bluffing. Baek then told the lady not to worry since he just had a side effect of the skill he used, but he was confident that he could mostly control it. Right now, Yu-jeong can feel that Baek isn't just an ordinary chef but might be someone who is hiding something big. Baek admitted that his condition this time was a bit weird. He asked Yu-jeong if she was fine, but then the lady was speechless as she felt that her heart was beating fast. Her face was blushing, and she suddenly offered Baek that they should make a knight's order together. With Baek, she believes that they might be able to save the world. At this moment, the hawk is still following Baek. Baek was confused by Yu-jeong's offer. The lady then allowed him to be the captain. Baek smiled and kindly refused the lady's offer. "Did you hit your head? Why should I do something that's tiring?" Baek said. Yu-jeong was shocked as she never thought that Baek wasn't interested. Baek then reminded her once again that he didn't come to save her or fight together with her. He showed the ledger to the lady and said that he was sure he already said the reason why he was here, and that was because of Yu-jeong's credit. The lady gasped and said, "Wait, you know that knights risk their lives for humanity, and they constantly invest in new equipment. In short, they're always short of money." Baek hid the ledger back and replied, "Is that so, customer? How would I know that you're like that? So, what should I do now?" He moved closer to Yu-jeong's face and told her that she should know that there was nothing free in his restaurant, so she had to work it off with her body. The lady was speechless. She was thinking about what Baek was trying to say. She then activates the power of her staff and immediately casts a flamethrower skill. She attacked it to Baek, so Baek flew away. He was holding his painful tummy and angrily asked Yu-jeong what she was doing. But Yu-jeong gets up and tells him he's the crazy one and an organ trafficker. What she expected was that Baek would tell her to hand over her organs to sell them. But then Baek was confused. He doesn't have any idea what Yu-jeong is trying to say. Yu-jeong suddenly screamed. Baek asked her what was going on, and it turned out that Yu-jeong noticed her hair was cut. She believes that it was because of the sword of Baek. She cried so loud, saying that all the hair salons were closed so she couldn't get them trimmed neatly. Baek was shaking. He was guilty and he regrets not twisting the blade. He then threw his bandana in front of the lady and told her to cover her head with it for now. Yu-jeong believes that the bandana he handed was the bandana he used in cooking. Baek then told her that she was going to need it from now on. "Pardon," Yu-jeong said. Baek got the ledger again and asked her if she leveled up her skill to not understand words. "I told you to work off your debt with your body until you pay off everything. You are a kitchen assistant at the knight's restaurant," Baek stated. Yu-jeong was worried. She honestly told Baek that she only knew how to cook instant noodles. Baek then said it doesn't matter since he also started as a newbie in cooking after all. He said that this would be the last time, but these words only caused more confusion to Yu-jeong. The first dungeon break happened a year ago. In Jongno, South Korea, a dimensional rift opened up for the first time. An incident where monsters poured out from what came to be known as a dungeon. People had to use magic to kill the monsters. Weapons infused with magic were necessary. Those who killed monsters using swords made from broken leg bones cleared the dungeon and were rewarded accordingly. Someone began bestowing superhuman abilities. The awakened who learned how to kill monsters began organizing and operating as knights to protect humanity. And Yu-jeong, who accidentally became awakened due to an unforeseen accident, created a night order to seek revenge on the demon tribe. But she has lost too many comrades. If only she had a bit more power, she believes losing her comrades won't happen. She knew that Baek was stronger than any awakened person she had seen so far. And if she would form a night order with him, she concludes she can definitely kill the demon god someday. At the present time, she was staring at Baek leaning on the truck. She thought that Baek was too valuable to remain just to be a chief. If she would show her true intentions and determination, she believes that Baek must understand. She handed him her remaining debt. The remaining 18 million won of outstanding debt. There, I've paid it all off, she said. They were currently in the city, specifically in a pawn shop. Baek asked her what she pawned and she honestly replied that she pawned her precious magic staff. As per the pawnbroker, they charge half a month's interest even if it's only 1 day. Yu Jiang then asked him to keep her staff safe since she still had a plan to get it back soon. Baek was shocked upon knowing it and asked the lady how she would fight without it. With what he said, Yu Jiang thought that he took the bite. She fakely cried and told Baek that she could just go to a cleared dungeon and grind on small monsters. Baek then said that what she was planning to do would take a lot of time and effort. I didn't become a knight to just be a kitchen assistant, Yu Jiang said. She pretended to be pitiful in front of Baek and Baek then said that she was a dedicated young girl. He proclaimed that Yu Jiang's debt was now cleared. Yu Jiang didn't show any interest in getting back the money but instead continued pretending. But then, Baek rode to his truck and told the lady, well then, good luck with dungeon grinding. Growing up means enduring pain. He then left, leaving the lady speechless. Upon realization, she then calls Baek and even runs on the street to chase him. Yu Jiang was able to reach the front seat of the truck, so Baek stopped the truck and asked what she needed. It seems like you're getting better at using ice magic. Ever considered adding an attribute? He asked. What? You can increase your rank by gaining experience points, but can you add an attribute to the one given at awakening? Yu Jiang replied. Baek's head hurt, saying that Yu Jiang was so unaware of how the world works and just planning to grind mindlessly in dungeons. Want me to show you the way or not? He asked, and Yu Jiang was smiling, but her smile irritated Baek, so Baek immediately started the truck and Yu Jiang was pulled by the truck. She was telling Baek to stop and decided to let go while still calling Baek to wait for her. Meanwhile, they arrived at the Knights Union headquarters. Nearby is the Jongno Dungeon No. 1. Inside the headquarters is where Yu Jiang was. She added water attributes to herself and was all set in just a few minutes. In front of her is the great magic stone that managed the Knights Union headquarters, and they can add another attribute. It's a recent discovery that attributes can be added. The great mage, Du Il-ho, was guarding it and he was impressed that Yu Jiang was well informed about it, knowing that information spreads slowly these days. Yu Jiang then gave thanks to the great mage, but the great mage claimed that they should be the ones who should thank the knights who always lead the fight against the demons. Yu Jiang bowed down and was about to say goodbye to the Il-ho, but a lady came behind her and acknowledged her for working hard. The lady attendant asked Yu Jiang to go to the lobby so they could assist her with the payment of adding water attribute to herself. Yu Jiang then suddenly whispered to Baek, saying that she heard the great magic stone was found after clearing dungeon No. 1, so she believes that there shouldn't be any labor or material costs when using it. But then, Baek disagreed with her, saying that there are no freebies in this world. Yu Jiang was annoyed at him and wanted to punch him super hard, but of course, she couldn't do it. She then went to the attendant and asked her how much it would cost. The attendant then replied that it would cost 20 million won per session. Yu Jiang was so disappointed since it cost too much, the same as the food of Baek served in the dungeon. She checked her pocket while saying that she didn't have the amount at this time. The attendant was smiling at her and told her not to worry since there is a mandatory labor program for someone like her set up by the Knights Union prison. 2 knights held her arms and brought her somewhere. She tried to resist but she couldn't. She calls Baek since she was expecting that she would only add an attribute in this place. I said it would be beneficial to add it. I didn't say I'd foot the bill, Baek replied casually. Yu Jiang was annoyed at him, reminding him that he didn't mention it would cost much money. Besides, she's broke since Baek took 20 million won from her in the first place. Baek smiled at her, but when she was away, Baek approached the attendant and proclaimed that he would cover the payment. Yu Jiang was freed by the knights. She was complaining that the people in the headquarters claimed to be a service organization for knights but are actually running a business. She then gave thanks to Baek and said that it was because of him that she got a new attribute. Surprisingly, Baek summoned Yu Jiang's staff. As per Baek, the staff seemed quite valuable, so he paid 20 million won to retrieve it. She then walked away while Yu Jiang called him, and her tears were about to drop. Are you an angel in disguise? She asked. So now, 20 million won for attribute addition and another 20 million for retrieval. Means, you owe me a total of 40 million won, Baek said. Yu Jiang was puzzled. Baek looked back at her and told her not to worry since she could work it off quickly as a kitchen assistant over the next few years. Yu Jiang was in disbelief that Baek tricked her as he kept conjuring debts out of thin air. Since she was speechless, Baek asked if she was not interested. Yu Jiang didn't respond, so Baek scared her by telling her that he would request a refund for the attribute change fee, and Yu Jiang could now head to prison. He then calls the guards and asks them to refund him according to the terms and take away Yu Jiang to prison. Do you think I will fall for this kind of threat? Kitchen assistant. Do you think you can treat me like a dog? I will never do it. I can't, Yu Jiang screamed. The next few days, Baek went to the Xiangsudong, the dungeon gate number 3, to sell food. He had a lot of customers waiting, so he started cooking immediately. He cooked corn dogs that helped hunters boost their stamina and survive longer in the dungeon. More customers also got curious upon seeing a food truck in the dungeon. For them to get more customers, Baek's assistant helped him promote the food. Of course, his assistant is Yu Jiang. In the end, she decided to be Baek's assistant in the meantime. Before she wore the waitress's clothes, Baek told her that their goal was to save the world from the devil. She then followed Baek's order to change her clothes. She was listening to Baek saying that saving the world is not just about defeating monsters and fighting in dungeons. Baek told her to put on her gloves. Just as weapons are made with magic are also imbued in monster bones, horns, and claws. It's natural that blood and flesh are also imbued with magic. As per Baek, combining it with various ingredients in the dungeon can develop a recipe that gives the eater a huge buff. If the knights buy that buff dish at an expensive price and clear the dungeon, it also means that they save the world too. At that time, Yu Jiang is preparing the meat. She grabbed one piece of it and asked Baek if this meat came from a monster. Baek then answered yes and informed her that it came from a big roach. Big roach means a giant cockroach. Yu Jiang was shocked upon hearing it, and she heard Baek informing her that she caught this roach in the second dungeon. Yu Jiang suddenly rattled and threw away the meat of roach since she felt disgusted. She was panicking inside the truck while Baek was annoyed, informing her that he needed to pay for the ingredients. At the present time, Yu Jiang was used to selling the food Baek was cooking. She was promoting it to the people walking around and informed its advantage. This big corn dog deep fried costs 1 million won, and it would help increase stamina by 200% within 2 hours. The main ingredients of this food are big roach meat and flour made from dungeon wheat. The man was shocked upon knowing the price. Yu Jiang was smiling at him and said that they had the same reaction at first. She then told the man to look at how good the customer's review was. Boss, your fried food is delicious, and it makes my stamina go up. I think I can conquer the dungeon. The guy who just ate a corn dog said. More people then rushed to the truck to buy corn dog. They were so curious and immediately ate it. All of them liked its unique taste and asked what it was made from. Yu Jiang then replied that it was just minced meat that the chef made using his magic to buff the food. She thought that the people would mock Baek because of what she said, but then it turned out that the men believed that the chef was also a mage, and all of them acknowledged Baek because of the tasty food. Yu Jiang then looks at Baek with annoyance, thinking that Baek really believes she can accept being his personal assistant because of her debt. For now, she chooses to accept it, knowing that she's not strong enough. She's planning to watch the opportunity quietly, and a night order with Baek as the leader. She believes that if it happens, she will make Baek realize his ability. She wanted to change Baek from a human who sells his soul for money to care about humanity. Why are your eyes like that? Are you cursing me? Baek asked. Yu Jiang panicked and denied Baek's accusation. Baek then suddenly asked her how long she had been a knight, as he was curious why she still hadn't managed to gather much money. According to him, among the knights, there are many of them who are more obsessed with money than saving people's lives. Before Yu Jiang could answer, she accidentally opened the kitchen cabinet of Baek, and she was surprised to see a lot of money hidden. She then reminded Baek that she already mentioned before that she didn't save money because she needed to renew her equipment from time to time. A year ago, during the dungeon break, her parents tried to save her. Her mother is in the intensive unit right now. She even can't get cured by some healing magic. It costs a lot of money. Baek was listening to her. There's something he wanted to ask her. He was aware of what would be the future of Yu Jiang, but he decided to keep silent. Oh my, do you know the two things that make people angry? First, when after you make someone curious then you stop, Yu Jiang said. Before she could finish her statement, a man came and asked them if their food truck was the famous Knight's restaurant. Yu Jiang was aware that this man and his comrades behind him were from Marin Knights, and she concluded that these men had just finished conquering the dungeon. She added these several men were from the 10th Battalion Post. Baek's eyes sparkled upon hearing it. He turned his head a little and heard the captain asking if their food was really tasty. Baek then heard Yu Jiang telling the captain that their food tasted good with a buff effect. Baek was staring at the porter behind the battalions. The captain at the same time proclaimed that he would buy all the food left. Of course, Yu Jiang was very happy and acknowledged the captain by calling him a mighty leader. I'll give you all the nasty, I'll give you all the tasty, big deep fried corn dog, she stated. The captain grabbed one, saying that he would first see if the corn dog is really worth the hype. Yu Jiang was looking at him swallowing the corn dog, waiting for his reaction. The captain was speechless. There's a memory that suddenly recalled in his mind, a time when they were inside a dungeon and were running out of ammunition. He was addressed as Sergeant Park, and he commanded all his men to retreat immediately. But in the end, he and the captain only ones left. However, the captain at that time was also weak already. There was a cockroach passed through Captain Park. Surprisingly, Captain Park grabbed it and swallowed it without any hesitation. He did it in order to survive since he was starving. Captain Kim died, but Captain Park tried to wake him up and told her to eat the cockroach so he could gain back at least a little bit of strength. Going back to the present time, Captain Kim becomes emotional remembering it. Yu Jeong gasped and suddenly said that she absolutely didn't put anything nasty or strange in the food. The captain was confused about what she was saying. He wiped his tears and said that he was having a PTSD attack all of a sudden. He then gasped and regretted showing his men how he cried. His men were enjoying the corn dog, but he then told them that they couldn't make their morale drop before an important battle. But the other members are eating well though, Yu Jeong said. Captain Park then commanded his men to spit out the food immediately. Why don't you let the other members finish? I don't think they got the buff effect yet, Baek said. Captain Park then told him not to worry since he didn't have a plan not to pay the bill. He then asked Baek about the total amount he needed to pay. Yu Jeong then said that the knights who tasted the food were a total of 50, and one corn dog cost 1,000,000 won each. Baek then made it short by saying that the total amount would be 50 million won. Both Captain Park and Yu Jeong were dumbfounded upon hearing the huge amount. Captain Park grits his teeth out of annoyance. But then, he composed himself, and as a leader, he declared to keep his word. However, he didn't bring a lot of cash at the moment, but he promised to pay back after clearing the next dungeon. Baek agreed and told Captain Park that he was hoping they would come out alive. He wished them good luck, and Captain Park and his team then gathered in front of the gate of the nearby dungeon. Right now, the porter was still eating the corn dog since he was very hungry. Captain Park then calls him, but he suddenly screams since he received a buff after finishing the corn dog. He then rushed to the formation, and this time, Yu Jeong saw that he was more energetic than earlier, and she concluded that he was the only one who received the buff effect since he finished one corn dog. The porter went directly to Captain Park to apologize, but Captain Park said that it was fine and he was glad that the porter got a buff since he will carry a lot of things after all. Gosh, why are you earlier giving death? I mean, why don't you make him sign the credit ledger? Yu Jeong asked, and Baek then replied that he wouldn't still receive any money from Captain Park after all. He was trying to give them buff, but he knew that those men would still die inside this dungeon. But he claimed that the porter has to pay back the debt because there is nothing free in his restaurant. He suddenly grabbed Yu Jeong's and told her that she needed to do something for him from now on. At this time, the battalions were inside the dungeon and caught a few monsters. They started attacking the monsters they saw using their weapons. Every time they clear the pack of monsters, they then report the damage before the monsters respawn. At this time, Captain Park noticed that the porter disappeared. He was already wounded, and even his other comrades. The men beside him then said that the porter was following them until a while ago. Then, they saw the porter vomiting on the tree. They believed that the porter was just having a hard time seeing lots of dead monsters. One of the battalions then approached the porter, asking him if he was fine. The porter continues to vomit and there's something spiky on his hand. The knight asks him what it is, but he doesn't reply and instantly beheads the knight. What do you mean? It's poison, the porter said with an evil smile on his face. The knight was poisoned instantly. The porter said that it was a bit painful, but he believed that the knight would be out of breath in no time. The monsters respawned after a few minutes. The battalions charged at the monsters, and while they were fighting, the porter was behind them aiming to kill them. Both of his hands had a spike. He then attacked the men behind, and since it was a surprise attack, no one was able to fight back. The porter killed the knight one by one. He also attacked Captain Park. Captain Park got a scratch on his stomach. He was mad at the porter for betraying them. You avoided it very well. As expected, you're the captain, right? The porter said. But there's nothing they can do since all of them were poisoned in an instant. Captain Park reminded the porter that everyone takes good care of him. The porter didn't deny it. He said that he likes how the battalions treated him. However, the backstabbing tastes more delicious for him. Captain Park wanted to get the antidote as he wanted to save his comrades. He was begging the porter to give him the antidote, but the porter said that there's no way he would stab them in the first place if he would still give them the antidote in the end. Captain Park charged at him with killing intent while asking him once again to hand over the antidote. Do you know what? This is a poison made from black magic, so it's not easy to make the antidote, the porter said. He was also wondering how long Captain Park would stand for it. Captain Park was struggling. The poison spread all over his body. He vomits a lot of blood and dies. The porter said goodbye to him and to the others who also died the same as Captain Park. The porter was smiling evilly, claiming that all humans deserve to die. "This is for the sake of the great devil. You should be honored to be the first sacrifice," the porter uttered. At this time, Baek came and bumped the porter with his truck without any hesitation. The porter flew away strongly. Baek then got off the truck and said, "You have to be careful when driving in the woods, because bugs keep hitting the car." Earlier, when Baek asked Yu Jiang's help, Yu Jiang believed that he would go in and help the battalions. She activates her flame while telling Baek to give her the order. But then, Baek pulled her and put her inside the dimensional storage. She slammed inside and she was startled. This dimensional storage is a space created within the dimensional gap to store items or luggage. The space size varies according to the user's ability. Baek threw goggles to the storage while telling Yu Jiang that she would stay there and should focus on her kitchen assistant duties. Yu Jiang grabbed the goggles and she was confused about what's the purpose of this thing. She then heard Baek saying that there were piles of onion and garlic behind her, and he wanted her to peel them all so she could get out of the storage. Baek put his upper part on the storage. He waved at Yu Jiang and told her that they should see each other later on. Yu Jiang immediately stands and runs towards him, hoping to make him stop. But then, the portal disappeared, so she ended up sunk on the ground. Back in the dungeon, Baek bumped the porter with his truck, causing the porter to fly away. When Baek gets off, he sees the corpses of the battalions. He believes that all of these dead men were poisoned. His original plan was to search for the battalions to save them, but then it turned out that he was late. There was a snake behind him and he was annoyed by the fact that the battalions didn't take the health buff. Before the monster could eat him alive, he instantly senses it and immediately cuts it while saying, "Monsters, get lost. I'm already in a bad mood." Shockingly, Baek was stabbed by the porter. "What? Why is the chef here?" the porter asked with a smile. Baek's blood splattered. He fell on the ground, and the porter believes that Baek came to collect his debt. "Too bad, you'll have to collect it in hell with the leader," he added. The poison spread all over Baek's face, but surprisingly, he was able to stand and said, "So it was you. I knew my first mission was here, but I didn't know who the target was." He turned his head around and concluded that the porter was killing an ally who was fighting alongside him and using poison magic to do it alone. The porter was laughing and told Baek that he would send him off painlessly as a thank you for the food buff he ate. He then charged at Baek, saying that the poison got to Baek's brain, which is why he was rambling nonsense. He tried to attack Baek and he was smiling ironically as he thought that he stabbed Baek. But then he saw Baek eating something. His smile disappeared and changed into confusion. The key is to ensure it's properly dried. The goal is to make it crispy by removing all the oil, Baek stated, and he continued swallowing the food made from centipede. He calls it a dried hell centipede skewer. I neutralize E rank or lower poisons, including magical creations, and restore 50% health. It activates instantly and its ingredients are herbal salt. Aside from the E rank hell centipede, the poison from Baek slowly dissipates. While swallowing the skewers continuously, he told the porter that there was no need to thank her for the food buff. "I spared you to settle my debt," Baek said. At this time, the porter found out that Baek only stuck his spiky weapon on his arm. He pulled the weapon, but Baek destroyed it. Baek then moved his body while saying that there was no free in his restaurant. He punched the porter's face. The porter sunk to the ground and let go of his bag. 99 times of regression, and through that long period, Baek witnessed and endured countless deaths. Deaths he has become too accustomed to. Back then, he was once a leader of the knights. He gave orders and the men under his command were willing to cover for him. Many monsters appeared and Baek bravely fought. But there was one thing he never got used to, and that was the betrayal of trusted comrades. That comrade of him claimed to eradicate all the malignant humans from this land. Baek then reminded him that he's also a human, but his comrade said no and stated that he was just pretending for that very moment just to destroy the formidable Night Order Baek led. All of Baek's comrades died, and Baek asked the traitor why. The traitor then said that he was just following the Demon Lord's will. Baek was so mad, but his anger could not do anything since the traitor beheaded him. After dying and regressing, when he meets the traitor again, he immediately stabs him and never gives him a chance to betray him again. Every time he met him, he killed him first. But in lifetimes where their paths didn't cross early, that guy mercilessly slaughtered other Night Orders and fulfilled the Demon Lord's command. However, the greatest issue was, more traitors like him betrayed their comrades at critical junctures. Those bastards made everyone distrust each other and pushed humanity into ruin. The great demon, Lord Narak, and those damned traitors who worshipped him. Even after 99 regressions, he could only uncover a few of them, one of which is this porter. He was aware that this porter belonged to the human extermination cult. The porter was shocked by the fact that Baek knew it and he wondered how Baek discovered their cult. He thinks that Baek might be one of them, but when he stares at him, he can't see any sign. He then rose and grabbed the weapon near him. "I don't know how you got this information, but I can't let you live now." Absolutely not, he stated. He then charged at Baek without knowing that anger had built up over the long years to Baek. Not just his own death, but the deaths of dear comrades caused by their betrayal. He wants to crush those traitors, including this porter. He clenched his fist and gritted his teeth. He was so furious while charging back at the porter. A strong explosion then happened, and it turned out that Baek was able to catch the porter in the neck. He lifted him. He wanted to crush him, but he knew it would just repeat the same cycle. He wants this life of him to be completely different. An entirely different approach. Now, let's settle the debt, he said, and the porter then promised to pay him as long as he would spare his life. Baek then slammed the porter on the ground and said, "Do you think I'm some loan shark from the neighborhood? Who said I'd take money?" Baek squeezed the portal guy's face and said, "Keep your tongue in. It'd be troublesome if you can't speak." Baek then cut a little part of the porter's mouth and the guy screamed in agony. In this life, Baek plans to use the human extermination cult as his hands, and their hands and feet will be spears that pierce demons. Their bones and flesh will become human shields. He is smiling with his plan, and this is the start of him changing his fate. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you wish to have another part of this recap, please give us at least 2,000 likes. Please don't forget to comment and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Until next time.